We say here the Hiroshima or Hiroshima, we're thinking of the A bomb, the atomic bomb, and that thing exploded with such force and such power and heat and light and everything that um, it actually, for lack of a better term, glued the people's shadows to the concrete. So that just gives you a perspective on just how big this whole event was. So in 1985, that was my son. I'm sitting there waving him off to tell him not to come here. In 1985, in Dallas, Texas, we had a nurse screener who was recorded arguing with a victim's uh, child, and she ended up refusing to dispatch an ambulance for the man's mother. Well, of course, the patient ended up dying, and because of this, it was a big media melee, and there were people, they just wanted heads to roll. So at the end of this Hiroshima of the medical dispatch, there were multiple terminations and quite a bit of resignations. As you can imagine, the field of EMD was put under a lot of scrutiny, and it faced its first great hurdle because now this thing has been painted in a completely terrible light because now you're showing that people are fallible and that they may not do the job. And so why are we going to funnel money into something where people can actively choose not to do the job? The next big one is going to be in 1987, Los Angeles, California. After repeated refusals for ambulance service and a misdiagnosis of a heart attack, a patient attempted to drive herself to the hospital and she ended up dying on the road. Now, this one right here is kind of tricky because the person on the other end tried to do their job, but they were trying to do the job of someone else. They tried to do the job of a doctor by diagnosing a condition or illness instead of just listening to what the patient said and responding accordingly. She ended up telling this patient that she was having an anxiety attack or breathing issue, something like that. And the patient thought it was okay for her to get into the car and drive to the doctor. Well, we saw what happened with that. So with this one, we see actually a couple of different issues. First things first, we see the refusal of aid, and we have the Hippocratic Oath. We have um, the duty to help in all of our oaths that every first responder has ever done. So they've already stepped on those, and then we have a form of negligence that is being exhibited here by them trying to diagnose something, and every first responder knows that that's not our job. We don't diagnose anything. We treat what's being presented, and we get them to advanced life support, ALS, and then we get them onto hospital care. So this person just crossed all the lines that they should have never crossed, and this is the result. And again, because of this, we have another media maelstrom about how flawed this program is and how it shouldn't be looked at or even thought about ever again. Now, both of these incidents were legal nightmares, and in and of themselves, they could have destroyed the whole new dispatch system with what's going on. There was a gunshot outside. With what was going on. But thankfully, both incidents led to improvements in the system. So instead of letting these horrible events break this system apart, they actually allowed it to, they used it to build them up and galvanize them. What resulted from these were better trained employees. Of course, you get things like this. The first thing people are going to ask for is reform. They want to know what's going on, what's broken, and they want it fixed. So all the bad things about this were closely examined, and everything that could be cut out, that needed to be cut out, was cut out. And as a result, you got better trained employees. You also got better equipment. They started to see some of the fallacies in in what they were telling people and what they were doing. So they said, we need to get these people better trained, and we can't do it with this outdated equipment. So they started to get things like that. And as a whole, you got a better organization because of these improvements in training and improvements in equipment. It led to a better organization overall. Now, because of this and all these improvements, in 1990, the American Society for Testing and Materials issued a practice standard for the emergency medical dispatch service. So basically, they in 1990 they were legitimized because now they were recognized by a national governmental agency, and they were going to make everything they were going to make everything right. They were going to make everything gold. So now that we know the history, and again, this history isn't that long. If we look at the if we look at it in comparison to the fire service that has roots going back to Roman Empire, if we look at the police service, which again has roots going back to the Roman Empire, when we compare the EMD service to all of those, EMD is a baby. Okay, so there wasn't a lot of history per se to build off of, at least history that was noteworthy. So let's go from that and let's just talk about what they do. So now we know what they did. Let's talk about what they do now. The actual job that is done by an EMD is just too big for this presentation. And when I say it's too big, I mean if I were to sit here and list every single thing that a emergency medical dispatcher does, this would be an extremely boring presentation, and it would be an extremely long presentation, because if you were to take every single thing that they do, it's just too much. I mean, it's like trying to describe. It's like trying to put a house mom or housewife. I hate to say it like that because they don't have to be a wife to stay at home take care of kids, but it's a mother who stays home and tends to the home and everything that is encompassed with that. It's like trying to put everything they do individually down on a resume. That would be a 10-page resume. So it's just too much. So here I simplified it down to 5 key points. And the best way to look at it, at least to me, is going to be to compare it to a general, okay? A wartime general. Because even though the wartime general, they're not on the field, they're still there though to take in information. They're there to interpret it. They're there to disseminate it out to the appropriate people, and they're the ones who gives the commands for mobilization of whatever asset is out in the field that they need. So let's talk about it. So the first one is going to be analyze. Every EMD person, when they get that phone call that comes through, they need to quickly and efficiently figure out what's going on. Most people don't call 911 when they're having a good day. So with that being said, you can imagine that there's going to be tempers flaring, there's going to be words slurred, it's going to be a lot of things that are really going to be hard to understand. And even a person's recollection of the events that's just transpired can be skewed or can be really broken up. So it's up to that EMD to sit there and listen to the whole thing and figure out exactly what's going on. And once they do that, once they've analyzed that, they need to move on to the next phase, which is going to be interpretation. Now, just because I say that I broke my finger doesn't mean that I'm calling you for a broken finger. I could be calling you because I just got into a car wreck and I flipped over the car 27 times and now I'm in an embankment and the car is filling with water. But because the only thing I keep saying consistently is broken finger, that's all the normal person hears. But an EMD person may have heard just a quick little blip of the rolling car or something like that, something that a normal person wouldn't chime in on, but that's their job. So they have to interpret the situation and what's going on and the needs of that situation. So once they do that, in some situations they can intervene, and on my PowerPoint I put an asterisk by it because not everything they can intervene on. Some things they just have to keep the person calm until we can get there and we can do our job. But let's say childbirth, the dad is screaming, he's excited, he's nervous, he's going on, and the nearest EMT rig is 20 minutes out because it's out in the county. The EMD person, the emergency medical dispatcher, it's their job to sit there and walk the father or whomever through the phases and steps of the childbirth if it's an imminent birth. Same thing for CPR. They walk them through or Even some suicides. Some suicides, they'll sit there on the phone with the person and try to get the person's mind off of whatever it is they want to do long enough for somebody to get there and try to intervene physically. But their interventions are still just as important and just as palatable as the people who are out in the field. It's just they can't do it every time because not every situation is going to warrant it. So after they've analyzed the situation, they've interpreted what needs to be done, and they've done interventions if they can do them. The next thing that the EMD is going to do is they're going to manage slash mobilize their resources. And when I say resources, I mean us, the first responders or the field responders, because some of them might be Duke Power or the city field ops, you know. So what they do is they look at the situation and then they sit there and say, well, what is needed for this situation? Once they figure out what's needed, they go ahead and they look at what's available, and then they go ahead and send the command to mobilize them. Now, I say manage, and when I say manage, a lot of people may think that, well, why are they managing? All they are is just clicking a button telling somebody to go. Well, it's not that simple because, as I alluded to earlier, there may be a unit that's out 20 minutes away, but there might be another unit that might be closer, and they need to look at the situation and look at can this situation wait for 20 minutes, or is it something that needs to go right now? If it is, then I'm going to send this one. But if it doesn't, I'm going to keep this one in this area because I may get another call there, and I'll have the one that's 20 minutes away come back in. And it's all little nuances like that come with time, but that's something that they do. And last but not least, they fill the role of counseling, at least while they're on the phone. I put an asterisk on there because not everything is going to necessitate a counselor, but on the situations that do, they are the ones that's on the phone, and they're the ones who will sit there and talk the person through whatever situation, whatever crisis is going on. They will stay in contact with them while they are waiting for somebody who can physically be there. Okay, so we talked about what it is they do, but let's talk about the requirements of the job, because what I did is I summarized what it is they do, and there are still some more things that they do that I just didn't cover because I felt like it fell under the umbrella. But for the time constraints that we have here, and for just general knowledge, I think it'd be good to look at the job requirements as a separate entity on this, because it will give you a little bit more information on what it is they do. So the first thing that every EMD person has to do is they have to be able to think quickly. Now, that's not a skill that everybody can do. That's not something that you can also be trained to do if it's not already in you, in my opinion. But they need to be able to think quickly. In our field of work, seconds matter. So if they hear somebody screaming their head off, the EMD person, they need to know that they need to shut up and listen very well, so they can hear what's going on and see and get whatever the appropriate response needed for it. And also, if something were to change suddenly, they need to be able to think quick enough to notify us, let us know, hey, guys, you got something else going on. So that could change our response, or they need to be able to think quick enough to add another resource to the call. Next one, they need to be able to work under stressful situations. Now, again, most people never call 911 when they're happy. So being in an environment where you're always being bombarded with negativity, pain, sorrow, it can really put a toll on you. And to compound all that, they're always going to be working in a situation where it's this right here, a situation where it's under time constraints. So in order for them to do their job quickly and efficiently, they have to be accustomed to a stressful situation. So for example, take an explosion that goes off, and you have a few people that are on fire. Somebody who sees it calls it in. the longer you wait to get the appropriate units dispatched, the more damage is going to be done to those people, and the less chance it is there's going to be for you to save their life. So you're really having to move and go when it comes to this type of stuff. You need to be able to actively listen and communicate effectively. We talked about that a little bit when we said that we use the mother example. The mom is about to give birth. The daddy is frantic. The EMD needs to be able to listen to the situation, listen to the background, listen to the surroundings, because the mom's different angst and pain sounds that she makes will tell the EMD person something different every time. And they need to be able to take that information, internalize it, and then communicate to whomever's on the phone the proper steps to do. And see, when it comes to that, you can't sit there and be somebody who says all the time. It's just not going to work, because you're wasting time, and eventually you're going to mess up something, and you're going to say something that's going to put somebody possibly in a bad situation. So I use childbirth as an example because you need to be very articulate when it comes to that, because if you say the wrong thing or if you mumble your words or something, you can end up having the baby in a very bad position, especially if the baby is has a nuchal cord, which is a cord that's wrapped around the baby's throat. If the EMD person cannot articulate to whomever is there the exact proper steps on what to do, that baby's going to die. So they need to be able to do all those things, but also they need to be able to establish. They need to be able to establish priorities and pass on information as needed. Now, in a way, that's going to be considered triage, but it's just triage over the phone as opposed to triage out in the field like we would do. Now, they're not going to red, yellow, green, or black tag somebody, but they will direct us to the most pertinent situation. If there's multiple situations going around, they'll be the ones that tell us, Engine 41, we need you to go over to the Coliseum area to help with that situation over there. Even though there's multiple situations going around, that situation is the one that needs us the most. And last but not least, I think that you can sum all these qualities up into basically the EMD person needs to be customer service oriented. They need to be somebody who knows that for lack of a better term, the customer is always right in these situations. Nobody ever calls when they're happy. Nobody ever calls when things are going right. So of course tempers are going to flare. Things are going to be just going left and right in that person's life. And the last thing they want to hear is somebody being short with them or rude with them. They just need somebody who can be calm, level-headed, and give the help that they're looking for. Okay, so we talked about all that. Now let's see how the movies, especially recently, how the movies have kind of hyped up the EMD field, and in a way it's showing the unsung heroes in their element, but it's also painting some unrealistic pictures, just like it does with everything else, because you're going to have your artistic liberties. But I think that this is good to take a look at, so just so people can know some things that's going on. Now you can see my screen, so hopefully you can hear everything.
Where's your emergency? Officers are going to be there any second.
He's going back downstairs.
Leah?
I hear the phone ring.
Whoever this is, I suggest you leave that house before you do anything you're going to regret.
It's already done.
This marks the